Hi, and welcome to another video by Jim the Car Guy. Today we have a 2005
Ford Explorer, and it came in for some basic maintenance, and while we had it up on the lift, we see that the left rear wheel seal is leaking gear oil, so we're going to be changing the axle seal on the left and right side. Now, if you're looking at this video, I'm sure you're probably thinking to yourself, how the heck do you get this thing apart? This is what they call a C-type rear, which means you have to pull the differential cover off, and we have to take out, it's probably an 8mm or a 5/16 bolt that's in there, and then we need to take out a lock pin, pull the clips out, and slide the axles out to change the seals. This is the backing plate of where the brake rotor is, and the axle goes into the differential. There's a seal up inside here that actually starts to leak, but to get to that seal, we're going to need to take these brakes off of here first. So the brakes will need to come off, the rotor will need to come off, and then we're going to need to come underneath here. So we're going to take off all of these bolts in the cover here. They look like they're 13mm. We're going to take all of those bolts off. We're going to drain the differential into a bucket, and then we're going to take the brakes apart, and we'll continue from there. So all right, let's get some tools and let's get started. Okay, now as you can see, there is no way you can get in here to get this axle shaft out of the differential. So we're going to go underneath the vehicle now. We're going to pull that cover down in the back right over here. We're going to drain the fluid out, and then we'll take this apart. But before we do this, we're going to go to the other side, and we're going to do the exact same thing, take the brakes and rotor off on the other side. Okay, now we got the other side off, and as you can see, the other side is really not leaking at all, but the whole thing has got to come apart anyway to change the seal on the left side. It is logical to change the seal on the right side too, especially when this has almost 200,000 miles on it. So, all right, so we are going to change this seal too. All right, next thing we're going to do is we're going to come up underneath here, and we're going to disconnect all of those bolts that hold that differential cover on. We're going to take all of these bolts off, and we're going to drain the fluid out. We're going to take out all of these bolts. I just want to point this out to you. Before you take out anything here and drain it, make sure that you check the fill up where you're going to fill it on the side to make sure that that bolt comes out first. When it is rusty, sometimes they're really rough to get out, or somebody may have stripped it off. So make sure you can open up your fill first before you do anything as far as draining this out. Now a lot of times these covers, it has on it what's called RTV, silicone, so it makes it very difficult to get it out. But you want to make sure that you have your bucket down there, because you see what happens? It comes out. Okay, we're going to let this drain for a little bit, and once it finishes draining, then we'll come right back. Okay, now, we did let this drain out, but you see these gears inside here? That's where we need to take off the clip inside here, but there's a little tiny pin over here. It's going to be 5/16 or 8mm, so we need to turn the differential drive shaft, I should say. Now, I will point this out to you. This is in neutral, just so you know. And we're going to turn it now until we bring around that little bolt right there. Now you can get on this with a wrench or a socket, whichever works for you. Now obviously when I try to turn this, we got to hold the drive shaft just to get that to loosen up. See that that pin is loose, right? So now what you're going to do is you're going to turn this down to take this pin, pull that pin out. We're going to put this on the side. And now that pin will come out. Now once you have this pin out, you do not rotate your axles at all. Otherwise your spider gears are going to fall out. You're going to have a little bit of a problem putting it back together. So we're just going to put this to a point where I can get in here easily, like that. And then we'll take our pin out like this. And now we're going to take out the C-clip in the back here that actually holds this in place. We push the axles in very slightly. And I always have a little magnet here just in case. Okay, it's pretty tight in there. All right, so now remember, while you have that pin out of here, do not rotate the axles. We're going to grab the clip. Take this clip and we'll put it to the side for now. And now we're going to pull that axle straight out. And now we're going to do the exact same thing on this side over here. Sorry if I cut in front of you there. Push the axle in. Sometimes with all the grease on here, it makes it a little difficult to get it out. All right, then we're going to pull the axle out to the side there also without rotating it. And now we didn't rotate anything in here, so everything still lines up exactly as it's supposed to, so that we could put our pin back in if we needed to, see? All right, so make sure you do not rotate the rear end or your spiders will fall out. Okay, so now that we have the axle pulled out, we know it's not engaged in a differential anymore, we can take it totally out of the car. Now, I just want to point this out to you. The seal we're going to be changing is this seal right here. So what we're going to do now is we're going to take the axle out. Hey, Harry. Okay, you pull the axle out partially just like this, and you see that little piece on the end right there? We're going to hook that seal like this, and we're going to pull it out like that. And that's the seal we're changing. All right? Now, this axle, we're just going to check and make sure it's in good shape, that the axle itself here is not all scored, which is not. It actually looks pretty decent. So we're going to take this out just like this. We're going to put this off to the side for now. Now we are going to take that seal out of the other side there. We're going to clean up this tube right here. So it's nice and clean. There's no grease or any kind of foreign matter in there whatsoever. The bearing itself is in good condition. And now we're going to reinstall our seal.
Okay, so now if you were going to be replacing this bearing inside here, if the bearing itself was damaged, which in this case it's not, but if the bearing had to be replaced, there's a tool that you take and you slide in through the center of the bearing. It turns sideways, and then it's like a slide hammer that actually pops the bearing itself out of the actual tube. But that's what you want to do now before you would go any further and put that seal back into the unit. itself. All right, so let's continue.
You always want to make sure that you match up the seal that came off. Because I can't tell you how many times I've gotten parts that are not the right ones for the car. All right, so now we're going to put a slight bead of silicone on here, and then we're going to tap it in until it's flush with this axle tube right here. All right, so let me grab some silicone, and we're going to tap it right in there. Okay, now we have a little bit of silicone on here. We're going to put the seal in like this. We're going to tap it until it's flush. All right, so now it's flush with the axle tube itself. We're going to wipe off any kind of residual that's on there. Okay, so now this side is finished. We're going to change the parking brake shoes, but let me do the other side and then we'll come right back. Okay, now I will tell you this, doing the brakes this way with the axle out, it's a lot easier than doing it with the axle in. With the axle in, it's a real pain in the rear end. All right, first thing we're going to do is we're going to take off these two springs right here. Now you can use cutting pliers, you can use locking vice grips, whatever you have. And you just take the spring off like this. Now in this case, we are going to reuse these springs over again, so we're going to hold on to it. We're going to take off the self-adjuster spring down here as well. And we're going to take this one, we're going to clean it off, obviously. Okay, next thing we're going to do is we're going to take our star out right here. Now you want to remember the direction. That was facing towards the front, so that's the way it's going to go back in. Now we are going to turn this star so that it's actually all the way closed. We're going to turn it all the way in because we do have new brake shoes going on. So we're going to turn this all the way in, which it is right now. We're going to clean it up a little bit, of course. We're going to get that grease off of here. And now we're going to take our brake shoes off. Now, the shoe, the way you take it off is you just push down on this little clip right here. And you see that little pin? See how it pushes up? Now we'll take this out. Now normally we would throw them away, but in this case we're using them over again. I'm going to tap it down a little bit. And I will push in one more time here. And we're going to hold the pin in the back. How you doing?
Hi.
Give me 1 minute. How you doing?
Hey, Ben. All right. I have a question. This is for help me out. I got this 09 Toyota Corolla 09. Yes, yes. I remember.
We're doing this both have the exact same car, same color and everything that yours was.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
The thing with this one, I changed the spark plug yesterday, and I noticed oil on the thread, not on the tip, but kind of. What would be involved to fix that?
It wasn't on the plug piece that sticks in the head?
No, it wasn't there. That was dry.
So it was the valve cover. When you took the plug out, was it oil down inside that too?
No. Well, it's half a black. Oh, all right. All right.
Give me just a minute. Just
All right.
finishing this up. Okay, so we're just going to push in a little bit more here, and I'm going to take that pin off just like that. And then we're going to take these shoes and we're going to pull them in this way so that they actually collapse onto each other. Okay. Now we just take it off like this. And we're going to clean this up a little bit. And once this is cleaned up, then we're going to come back and we'll put the new shoes on. But let's clean this up a little bit first. Okay, now that we have everything cleaned up, we're going to put a little bit of the synthetic brake grease every place that the brake shoe is going to touch. Okay. All right, so we're going to take this now and we're going to put it in place here where it belongs. And we're just going to let that spring hang for now. We're going to put this little pin through here like that. And we're going to hold the pin from the back. Take the clip, put the clip over the top. Push it in. And you just let that pin, let that lock piece come down over the top. Just like that. Now that looked easy, right? You're going to have a pain in the rear end doing that. I know it's not that easy. That actually went a lot smoother than it's supposed to. Okay, next thing we're going to do now is we're going to take this shoe, we're going to take this spring, and then the back right there, we're going to hook that spring on like this, and then we're going to take it like this. We're going to push it up where it belongs. And for now, we're just going to let this sit for just 1 second here. We're going to grab our star. Now remember, the star was facing towards the front, right? So we're just going to push this back. And this is just temporary right now. We're going to push it back. Put our star in place like that. Going to put that pin back in through there. We're going to take our lock clip, we're going to put it over the top, and we're going to hold that pin from the back now. And then we're going to take it like this, take our screwdriver, put it on here like this. And you see how that lock pin now is locked in place. All right, now the next thing we're going to do, we're going to take our spring that was down on the bottom right here. We're going to reattach it like this. And we're going to take our other spring that we previously removed. We're going to put it on here like this. And now we're going to pull the spring and we're going to hook it right on there. You want to make sure that you don't pop yourself in the chin. Okay, and that's it. Now our parking brake shoes are on. Our star is closed up all the way, and that's it. We're all set. Now we did clean this up already here, and we're going to slide our axle back in. Now when we push the axle back in, you do not rotate the axle. If you rotate it, you're going to lose those spider gears inside. So we take the axle, you're going to hold it up. You're not going to let the axle slide on top of that brand new seal right there. You're going to pick it up so this, you lift it up and put it through the center of it. And you just grab it with 2 hands. Now what I was doing is, when you put the axle in, these splines don't line up exactly right. So what I did is I pulled it, I moved it a hair, pushed it back in. Pulled it out, turned it a hair, put it back in. You want to make sure that the splines are not grabbing the spider gears inside the rear end, and you won't be pulling those spider gears out of position where they belong. All right, next thing we're going to do now is let's go underneath the truck. We're going to put those C-clips back in, and then we're going to start to wrap this up and get this done. Now we're going to take our C-clip that we previously took out. We have to put it right back inside there without rotating anything. So we push the axle all the way through, and now we're going to slide this clip back in there. Sometimes it's a little bit tough to get in there, so if you want to use your magnet to assist you, you can. Except I don't think it's going to help in this case here. Oh, I'm wrong. Okay, we're going to push that clip back in all the way in as far as it can go. And then we're going to go to the axle tube on the other side, and we're going to pull it out slightly. Sorry, I didn't mean axle tube, I meant the axle. We're going to pull it out slightly. Now this axle over here, I put that in already. That is already in there, and I put that C-clip in. Now we're going to take our pin that we previously took out, goes right in through here. And if you didn't turn anything, this should go right in without a problem. Now, if you try to put this in and it does not go in, that means you rotated the axle just a little bit, and you'll need to rotate it a little bit. Now, if you try to get it in and it goes to this point here and it won't go any further, that means your C-clip is not in correctly. You'll need to reposition your C-clip and pull your axle back out. All right, but as you can see, this one goes right in. We're going to grab our pin. We're going to put our pin back inside, but we're going to have to rotate it just a hair because the pin, the lock will not fit in there. All right. Okay, now we're going to clean off this housing right here, and then we'll come right back. All right, now, we're not going to use RTV, we're going to use a gasket to put this back together with. So what we're going to do now is, so the gasket doesn't slip, we're going to put a little bit of adhesive on there to hold the gasket in position. Gasket back in here the way it came, the way it lines up with the holes. And then what I normally do is just stick a few bolts through it just to hold the gasket in position so that the bolts will line up properly. You don't have to put every bolt in there. And now we're just going to let that gasket adhesive dry a little bit. All right, and while that's drying, we're going to go back underneath the bottom. We're going to clean up the housing. Your gear here is going to have to line up with this in the bottom right over here. So let's clean off any of this residual. And we're going to lift this up. And then we're going to catch a couple of bolts in it to hold it in place. Okay, now our rear end cover is now tight. Now we're going to come on the side over here, we're going to fill it up with differential oil, and once we have it filled up, then we'll put the brakes back on. So now we're going to take out this plug right here, and this is where we're going to be filling it up through. You want to make sure you have a bucket underneath here, of course, because it is going to make a little bit of a mess. You want to be able to catch the fluid. Now obviously now it's empty, but we will be filling it. Okay. And what you do now is you fill it until the fluid comes running back out through here, and then you know you're full. And you use your finger as a dipstick. If you put your finger in and you can touch the fluid like that, then you're full. All right? Next thing we're going to do now is we let it drain out till it stops draining, and then we screw our plug back in. Nice and snug. And we're just going to wipe off any kind of residual leakage underneath here, and now we'll go up and we'll put the brakes back together. Okay. Now we did clean up this rotor, just so you know. And we remember we backed off on that adjustment all the way back off of here. Now we're going to go underneath the bottom, and we're going to go up in there and we're going to adjust the parking brake so that it's snug. You want to adjust it just till it touches. All right, so, and the way you would do that, let me show you. It's going to be hard to do it and show you at the same time, but see this little hole up inside here? Right in there, we're going to go in there with a spoon, and we're going to turn that star until we have a slight drag on it. So let me do that, and then we'll come right back. We're going to put our caliper back on here. We're not changing the brakes, just so you know. On the top like this. We just made sure that these slide pins were out of the way. We're going to catch these two bolts up on the top here. You're going to catch them both by hand. You want to catch them both before you tighten up one or the other. You want to make sure both are caught and screwed in. And now we'll just snug our caliper back in place. Okay. Let me grab that, we'll come right back. Okay, so that's it. So if you ever come across that where you're leaking oil at the back, this is the C-type rear. They're a little bit more involved than the type with the regular bolts that actually come in there. Not a big deal once you see it done. Just go over everything in your head, make sure you put everything back in, especially that oil. Make sure you have that differential filled up. I did have one customer back in the day, probably 30 plus years ago, that had a work done on the differential, and the shop failed to put oil in it and wound up being towed into me with a burnt out rear. So make sure you put your oil in, make sure it's full right up to the level. Remember, your finger is your dipstick. If you could touch it with the pinky, then you're good. What I normally do is fill it right to the top, let it bleed out until it's even with the screw, and then you're full. All right, we cleaned off everything, so we are going to get a little bit of a burning smell, but that's it, we're all done. As always, thanks for watching. See you on the next one.